Is that a new Range Rover? I stood frozen in my driveway, staring at my younger sister, Sophia, as she stepped out of a gleaming black SUV. The car looked like it cost more than my entire annual salary as a high school teacher. Just last week, Sophia had told me she was still too broke to start repaying the $40,000 she borrowed from me a year ago. Money I had saved for years, working overtime and skipping vacations, all for my dream of owning a home. Sophia ran her hand along the car's hood, her face lighting up with pride. Just got it yesterday. It's a lease, but you wouldn't believe the features it has. I felt my stomach drop. I thought you were struggling financially, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's why you needed to borrow money, remember? Sophia waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I still am, but this is different. I needed something reliable for work. Reliable? Her old car was barely 3 years old. I remembered the day she showed up at my door, mascara running down her face, begging for help. She'd promised to pay me back in 6 months. I'd believed her because that's what sisters do. They trust each other. But now, as I watched her flaunt her new car, I realized something. Sophia wasn't just bad with money. She was taking advantage of me, and I had let her. Your old car was perfectly fine, I pointed out, my voice sharper now. And you promised to start paying me back after 6 months. It's been a year, Sophia. She rolled her eyes, pulling out her phone to check her reflection in the screen. Don't be so uptight, Emily. You're doing fine. You've always been good with money. It's not like you need it right now anyway. I stood there, speechless. The casual way she dismissed my loan, the way she implied that being responsible somehow meant I didn't deserve to be repaid, it all hit me at once. Actually, I do need it, I said firmly. That money was for my house down payment. Sophia shrugged, glancing at her watch. Well, maybe this is a sign you should keep renting. Property ownership is so much responsibility anyway. And with that, she climbed back into her shiny new car, waving as she drove off to her next appointment. As I stood there, watching her disappear down the street, something inside me snapped. A year of excuses, broken promises, and blatant disrespect crystallized into one clear realization. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't stop thinking about Sophia's new car. The image of her stepping out of that shiny black SUV replayed in my mind over and over again, each time making my blood boil a little more. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about trust, about family. I remembered the day she came to me. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, her voice trembling as she begged for help. Emily, I'm drowning, she had said, sitting at my kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The credit card bills are piling up, the mortgage is overdue, and I might lose the house. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. I'd hesitated. That money wasn't just sitting in my account for fun. It was my future, my dream of finally owning a home after years of renting tiny apartments and living paycheck to paycheck. But Sophia had looked so desperate, so broken. I promise I'll pay you back in 6 months, tops, she had said, her voice cracking. You're my only hope, Emily, please. And, like the fool I was, I'd written her a check that same day. $40,000, practically my entire savings. At first I didn't mind. She was my sister after all. Family helps family, right? But as the months went by, the excuses started piling up. I had to pay for car repairs, she'd texted me one month. The property taxes were higher than I expected, she said the next. The roof is leaking, and I had to get it fixed, came another excuse. Meanwhile, her social media told a very different story. Photos of weekend getaways, fancy dinners, and regular salon visits filled her feed. And now, a brand new Range Rover? I thought about calling my mom to vent, but I already knew how that conversation would go. Sophia's going through a rough time, Mom would say, her voice full of sympathy. You know how hard things have been for her since the divorce. The divorce. That had been 3 years ago, and Sophia had walked away with a paid-off house and a generous settlement. But somehow, She'd burned through all of it while maintaining her expensive lifestyle. Growing up, Sophia had always been the charming one, the one who could talk her way into or out of anything. When she maxed out her first credit card at 19, my parents paid it off without a second thought. When she dropped out of college after 3 semesters, they called it finding her path. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one who worked part-time jobs through college, saved every penny, and built a stable career as a teacher. My parents were proud of me, sure, but there was always this underlying tone of, well, of course Emily's doing fine. She's the responsible one. But being responsible didn't mean I deserved to be taken for granted. That evening, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, staring at my bank statements. A year ago, I'd had nearly $50,000 saved, enough for a decent down payment on a modest home in my area. Now, thanks to Sophia, I was back to square one, renting a 1-bedroom apartment while she cruised around in a luxury SUV. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Sophia just showed us her new car. Isn't it gorgeous?" She said she got an amazing deal. I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to throw my phone across the room. Of course she had. Sophia always got amazing deals that somehow left her broke. I thought about replying, about telling Mom the truth, that Sophia had bought that car with money she still owed me. But I already knew how that conversation would go. "She's your sister, Emily. You need to be patient. She's going through a rough time." Rough time. That phrase had become the family's go-to excuse for Sophia's behavior. But what about me? What about the rough time I was having, watching my dreams of home ownership slip further and further away because I'd trusted my sister? I opened my laptop and scrolled through my emails, finding the one Sophia had sent me a year ago. "I promise I'll pay you back in 6 months. Tops. You're my only hope, Emily. Please help me. I'll never forget this." Below that were months of follow-up emails from me, each one met with a different excuse. I closed my laptop, my hands shaking with anger. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about family, about being taken for granted. And I was done. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in months. I couldn't keep letting Sophia walk all over me. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine while she flaunted her new car, her vacations, and her designer clothes, all while sitting on $40,000 of my hard-earned money. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started gathering everything I had. Every email, every text message, every bank transfer. I even found the napkin where she'd scribbled her repayment plan that day in my kitchen. 6 months tops, she'd written, complete with monthly payment amounts she'd never made. The pattern was almost laughable. Urgent pleas for help, followed by months of excuses, sprinkled with casual mentions of her latest splurges. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Hey sis, some friends are planning a spa weekend next month. You should come. We could do a payment plan for your share." I stared at the message in disbelief. She was inviting me to spend money on a spa weekend while she still owed me $40,000? The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. That evening, I called my cousin Jessica. She was one of the few people in the family who truly understood what I was going through. "I saw Sophia's new car on Instagram," Jessica said cautiously. "Isn't she the one who borrowed your house down payment?" "The very same," I replied, my voice tight. Jessica sighed. "Emily, you need to do something. This isn't okay." "I know," I said. "But what can I do? She's my sister. If I push too hard, the whole family will turn against me." "They might," Jessica admitted. "But you can't keep letting her take advantage of you. My husband says you should have gotten something in writing." She was right, of course. I'd trusted family instead of protecting myself. But it wasn't too late to fix that mistake. After we hung up, I started researching small claims court procedures. The maximum claim amount in our state would cover most of what Sophia owed me. I also found templates for formal demand letters, the first step in legal proceedings. My hands shook as I typed Sophia's name into the template. This would change everything. No more family dinners pretending everything was fine. No more playing the understanding sister while watching Sophia spend my money. No more being the family ATM. But as I looked around my small apartment, the cramped kitchen, the peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, I felt my resolve strengthen. Sophia had chosen her priorities when she bought that Range Rover. Now it was time for me to choose mine. The next day, I sent the demand letter by certified mail, keeping the receipt as another piece of evidence. 3 days later, Sophia burst into my apartment unannounced, waving the letter in her hand. "Are you serious with this legal garbage?" she shouted. "I'm your sister. You can't sue your own sister." I kept my voice steady. "You've had a year to handle this like sisters, Sophia. Now we're handling it like adults who made a financial agreement." She collapsed onto my couch, already starting the waterworks that had worked so well last time. "I can't believe you're being so cold about money," she sobbed. "It's just money, Emily. Family is more important than that." "Yes, family is important," I agreed. "So important that I gave you my house down payment when you needed help. So important that I trusted you to keep your word. How's that working out?" Sophia sniffled, wiping her eyes. "You know I've been struggling." "Not too much struggle for a new Range Rover," I cut in. "Or those designer boots you're wearing. Or that European vacation you're planning." Her tears dried up instantly, replaced by anger. "You're just jealous because I know how to enjoy life while you pinch pennies and obsess over spreadsheets." "No," I said calmly. "I'm angry because you took advantage of me, because you promised to repay me and instead spent my money on luxury cars and spa weekends." Sophia stood up, grabbing her designer purse. "Fine, take me to court. See how Mom and Dad feel about that." "They already know," I said, crossing my arms. "And if they think I'm being unreasonable, that's their problem. You have 30 days to respond to the demand letter. After that, I'm filing in small claims court." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Minutes later, my phone lit up with texts from our parents. "Oh, why are you threatening your sister? She's family." "Dad, let's talk about this. No need for lawyers." I took a deep breath and typed out a group message. Sophia borrowed $40,000 a year ago, promising to repay it in 6 months. Yesterday, she bought a new Range Rover instead of paying me back. I'm done being taken advantage of. The responses came quickly. "Mom, she needed that car for work." "Dad, maybe we can work out a payment plan." "Sophia, I can't believe you're airing private family matters like this." I laughed out loud at that last one. Private family matters? Like the Range Rover she'd plastered all over social media? "Private or public, the money is still owed," I replied. "You have 30 days to respond to the demand letter. After that, I'm filing in small claims court." For the first time in a year, I felt like I was finally taking control. The day of the court hearing arrived faster than I expected. I woke up early, dressed in my most professional outfit, and double-checked the file of evidence I'd spent weeks preparing. Every email, every text message, every bank transfer, it was all there, neatly organized and ready to present. Jessica, my cousin and biggest supporter throughout this ordeal, met me outside the courthouse. She gave me a reassuring smile and a quick hug. "You've got this, Emily," she said. "Just stick to the facts. Don't let her guilt you." I nodded, taking a deep breath. I wasn't just fighting for the money. I was fighting for my self-respect. Sophia, of course, showed up late. She breezed into the courtroom wearing a designer dress and carrying a new handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Our parents trailed behind her, looking uncomfortable and out of place in the small claims courtroom. Sophia didn't even glance in my direction as she took her seat. Instead, she whispered something to Mom, who gave her a sympathetic pat on the arm. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, entered the room and called the case. I stood up, my heart pounding, and presented my side. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside me. "A year ago, I lent my sister $40,000 to help her avoid financial ruin. She promised to repay me within 6 months, but as of today, I haven't received a single payment. Instead, she's used that time and money to fund a luxury lifestyle, including the purchase of a new Range Rover. I handed over my evidence, the original bank transfer, Sophia's written promises, the timeline of excuses, and even screenshots of her social media posts showing her recent purchases and vacations. The judge flipped through the documents, her expression unreadable. When it was Sophia's turn to speak, she launched into her usual tactics. "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding," she said, her voice trembling as she wiped away a perfectly timed tear. "I've been going through a really rough time since my divorce. I'm doing my best to get back on my feet, but Emily has always been so good with money. She doesn't understand how hard it's been for me." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Carter, are you telling me you purchased a luxury vehicle while owing your sister $40,000? Sophia hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "It's just a lease," she said quickly. "And I needed it for work. I'm in real estate and appearances matter in my line of business." The judge didn't look impressed. "That's not what I asked. Did you buy a new car instead of repaying your sister?" Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "Well, yes, but—" "And these vacation photos posted on your social media last month?" The judge interrupted, holding up a printout from my evidence file. "Was this trip necessary for work as well?" Sophia's face turned red. "No, but—" "Miss Carter," the judge said firmly, "this court takes a very dim view of individuals who demonstrate such blatant disregard for their financial obligations. Your sister has provided substantial evidence of both the loan and your ability to repay it, had you chosen to do so." I watched as Sophia's usual manipulations fell flat. The judge wasn't family. She couldn't be swayed by tears, guilt trips, or vague excuses about rough times. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "your social media posts suggest a pattern of frivolous spending while actively avoiding your debt. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. You are ordered to repay the full amount of $40,000 within 90 days. Sophia gasped. 90 days? That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money." The judge didn't miss a beat. "Perhaps you should consider selling your new car," she said dryly. "Next case." In the hallway afterward, Sophia stormed up to me, her face twisted with anger. "Happy now?" she hissed. "You've ruined everything." I met her glare with a calm I didn't know I had. "I didn't ruin anything, Sophia. You did that when you decided your luxury lifestyle was more important than your integrity." Our parents hovered nearby, looking lost and unsure of what to say. They'd never seen Sophia face real consequences before. They'd never seen me stand up to her like this. "We could help with the payments," Dad started to offer, but I cut him off. "Don't you dare," I said firmly. "She got herself into this mess with her choices. She can get herself out the same way." Sophia stormed off, muttering under her breath, and Mom quickly followed, throwing me a pleading look over her shoulder. Dad stayed behind, his expression conflicted. "Emily," he said quietly, "I know this has been hard on you. I wish it didn't have to come to this." "So do I replied. "But I didn't have a choice. She left me no choice." Over the next few weeks, the fallout from the court case rippled through our family. Sophia had to sell her Range Rover to cover part of the debt, and she posted a dramatic update on social media about betrayal and the price of trusting family. Of course, she conveniently left out the part where she owed me $40,000. Mom called me almost daily, trying to guilt me into reconciling. "She had to cancel her Europe trip," Mom said one evening, her voice heavy with disappointment. "And she's looking for a smaller apartment. Don't you think that's punishment?" "That's not punishment, Mom," I replied. "That's living within her means, like everyone else has to do." Dad surprisingly stayed out of it. For the first time, he seemed to understand that enabling Sophia wasn't helping her. By the end of the 90 days, Sophia had repaid most of what she owed me. She transferred the money without a word, but not before posting another vague social media update about closing difficult chapters and moving forward. I didn't care. The money was back where it belonged, in my savings account. The aftermath of the court case rippled through my family like a tidal wave. Sophia's carefully curated image of success and charm had taken a hit, and she wasn't handling it well. The first thing to go was the Range Rover. She sold it within a week of the court ruling, replacing it with her old car, the perfectly functional 3-year-old sedan she'd claimed wasn't reliable enough. She made sure everyone in the family knew about her sacrifice, posting a dramatic photo of herself handing over the keys with a caption about letting go of material things to focus on what really matters. I rolled my eyes when I saw it. Sophia had always been good at spinning a narrative, and this was no different. Mom, of course, was heartbroken. "She's so embarrassed at work," Mom told me over the phone one evening. "You know how important appearances are in real estate? She says clients are already starting to notice." "Maybe she should focus on paying her debts instead of impressing people," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "But she's your sister, Emily," Mom said, her voice heavy with guilt. "Don't you think she's been through enough?" "No, Mom," I said firmly. "She hasn't. Selling a car and canceling a vacation isn't some great punishment. It's called living within your means. The rest of us do it every day." Mom sighed, clearly frustrated that I wasn't budging. She'd always been the family peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts and kept everyone happy. But this time, I wasn't playing along. Sophia, meanwhile, had taken her drama to social media. She posted vague updates about family betrayal and the pain of being misunderstood, carefully avoiding any mention of the court case or the money she owed me. At first, some of our relatives bought into her narrative. Aunts and uncles called me, their voices dripping with disapproval. "Emily, don't you think you were a little harsh?" Aunt Linda asked during one particularly tense phone call. "Family is supposed to stick together." "Emily is also supposed to keep their promises," I shot back. "Sophia borrowed $40,000 from me and spent it on vacations and a luxury car. What was I supposed to do, just let it go?" "Well, maybe you could have handled it more privately," Aunt Linda said, her tone sharp. "Do you mean like Sophia handled her new car and European vacation privately?" I replied, because she had no problem flaunting those on Instagram while ignoring her debt to me. The conversation ended quickly after that. Not everyone was against me, though. My cousin Jessica, who had been my rock throughout this entire ordeal, continued to send me daily texts of encouragement. Her husband, a lawyer, even helped me navigate the legal process, ensuring I was fully prepared for every step. And then there was my dad. At first, he'd stayed quiet, clearly torn between supporting me and protecting Sophia. But after the court case, something shifted. One evening, he called me out of the blue. "Emily," he began, his voice hesitant. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. Your mother and we didn't do right by you." I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "We've spent so many years cleaning up Sophia's messes," he admitted, paying off her credit cards, covering her mistakes, making excuses for her, and in the process, we've taken you for granted. You've always been the responsible one, the one we didn't have to worry about. But that doesn't mean it was fair to put so much on you." I didn't know what to say. For years, I'd felt like the invisible child, the one who was expected to handle everything on her own, while Sophia got all the attention. Hearing my dad acknowledge that was both validating and emotional. "Your mother and I helped Sophia with a down payment when she bought her house," he continued. "We should have done the same for you. It's not the full amount, but—" He trailed off and I heard the sound of paper rustling. "I'm sending you a check for $25,000, he said. "It's not to pay off Sophia's debt, that's her responsibility, but it's a start toward making things right with you." Tears welled up in my eyes as I thanked him. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the recognition, the acknowledgement that I deserved better. 6 months after the court case, Sophia finally made the last payment. She transferred the money without a word, but not before posting another cryptic social media update about closing difficult chapters and moving forward. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. By then, I'd already used the money to put a down payment on a modest but beautiful little house. It wasn't as luxurious as the one I might have bought a year ago before Sophia drained my savings, but it was mine. Every room represented not just my financial investment, but my investment in myself. The day I closed on the house, Jessica came over to help me unpack. As we worked, she handed me a framed quote she'd designed herself. "Sometimes the highest price of peace is your self-respect," it read. I hung it in my home office, a reminder of everything I'd learned over the past year. The next big family event was our annual reunion, hosted by Aunt Linda. I debated whether or not to go, knowing the whispers and judgment I'd face, but in the end I decided I wasn't going to let Sophia's drama keep me from my family. When I arrived, the tension was palpable. Some relatives avoided me completely, while others cornered me to share their unsolicited opinions. "I still think you should have handled things differently," Uncle George said, shaking his head. But then something unexpected happened. My younger cousins started asking me for financial advice. "How did you save up for a house?" one of them asked. "I'm terrible with money and I could really use some tips." Even Aunt Susan, who'd initially criticized me, pulled me aside to thank me. "Your stand gave me the courage to stop lending money to my son," she admitted. "He's been gambling for years and I've been enabling him. Watching you hold Sophia accountable made me realize I needed to do the same." The real surprise, though, came from my dad. Toward the end of the reunion, he pulled me aside, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I've started tracking our expenses," he said, holding up a spreadsheet he'd printed out. "Your mother and I are finally getting serious about managing our finances. I figured if you can stand up to Sophia, I can stand up to our budget." I laughed, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Sophia didn't come to the reunion, but she sent a card, a simple, store-bought one with "Congratulations" written in gold letters. Inside, she'd written a short note. "Congrats on the house, Sophia." No fake sentiments, no dramatic statements, just acknowledgement. It wasn't the reconciliation Mom had been hoping for, but it was enough for me. That evening, as I sat on the back porch of my new home, listening to the happy chatter of my family inside, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. A year ago, I'd been the family peacekeeper, the reliable one who sacrificed everything to keep everyone else happy. Now I was something else. Something stronger, clearer, more defined. Sometimes family bonds have to break to reset properly. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable. And sometimes losing what you thought you needed helps you find what you actually deserve. A year after the court case, life had settled into a new normal. My relationship with Sophia was still strained, but I'd come to accept that some wounds take time to heal, if they ever heal at all. She had moved into a smaller apartment and was working hard to rebuild her finances. Occasionally, I'd hear updates from Mom about how Sophia was trying her best or learning to live more modestly. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I wasn't consumed by her choices. I wasn't checking her social media to see what new luxury item she'd bought, or waiting for her to finally acknowledge the damage she'd done. I had let go of the need for an apology, and in doing so, I'd freed myself from the weight of her actions. My little house had become my sanctuary. Every corner of it reflected my hard work and determination. The walls were painted in soft, calming colors, and the shelves were filled with books I'd collected over the years. The backyard, though small, had a garden where I'd started growing vegetables, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the space for. Jessica visited often, bringing her kids to play in the yard while we sipped coffee on the porch. "You seem so much lighter these days," she said one afternoon, watching as her youngest chased a butterfly across the grass. "I feel lighter," I admitted. "It's amazing what happens when you stop carrying other people's burdens." She smiled knowingly. "You've always been the strong one, Emily. It's about time you started using that strength for yourself." The family dynamics had shifted in subtle but significant ways. Mom still tried to play peacemaker, but even she seemed to realize that things couldn't go back to the way they were. "I just wish you and Sophia could talk," she said during one of her visits to my house. "You're sisters. You're supposed to be there for each other." "I was there for her, Mom," I replied gently. "But being sisters doesn't mean letting someone take advantage of you. It doesn't mean sacrificing your own happiness to keep the peace." Mom sighed, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. "I know you're right," she said quietly. I hate seeing my girls like this." "I know," I said, reaching for her hand. "But this isn't just about me and Sophia. It's about the whole family learning to set boundaries. We can love each other without enabling bad behavior." She nodded, and for the first time, I felt like she truly understood. To my surprise, Sophia started making small efforts to repair our relationship. It wasn't dramatic or immediate, but over time, I noticed little changes. She stopped posting about her extravagant purchases on social media. Instead, her updates were more grounded. Photos of her cooking at home, working on DIY projects, or spending time with friends. One day, she sent me a text out of the blue. "Hey, I saw this article about budgeting and thought of you. Hope you're doing well." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. I replied simply, "Thanks, Sophia. Hope you're doing well too." We didn't dive into a deep conversation, but the exchange felt different, softer, like maybe, just maybe, we were both starting to let go of the resentment. Looking back, the entire ordeal had taught me more than I ever expected. I learned that boundaries aren't just important, they're essential. For years, I'd let guilt and obligation dictate my actions, sacrificing my own needs to keep the peace. But peace built on silence and resentment isn't real peace. I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong. It makes you someone who values their own worth enough to demand respect, even from the people closest to them. And I learned that family doesn't mean unconditional forgiveness. It means love, yes, but love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be hurt over and over again. A few months after Sophia's final payment, I hosted a small housewarming party. It wasn't anything fancy, just a few close friends and family members gathered in my backyard to celebrate this new chapter of my life. Sophia didn't come, but she sent a gift. A set of gardening tools with a note that read, "For your new garden, Chérie, Mary." I smiled when I opened it. It wasn't an apology, but it was her way of extending an olive branch. As the sun set and the party wound down, I sat on the porch with Jessica, watching the string lights twinkle in the trees. "Do you think you and Sophia will ever be close again?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment before answering. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think we're both learning. She's learning to take responsibility, and I'm learning to let go of what I can't control. Maybe one day we'll find our way back to each other, or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm okay with it." Jessica nodded, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," she said. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine. I still see Sophia at family gatherings, and while things are still a little awkward, they're no longer hostile. We've found a tentative truce, built on mutual respect and a shared understanding that things can't go back to the way they were. But maybe that's okay. My parents have started setting boundaries of their own, and for the first time, I feel like the family is learning to function in a healthier way. As for me, I've started dreaming again. The house is just the beginning. I'm saving for a trip to Europe, something I've always wanted to do but never thought I could afford. And this time, I'm doing it for me. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. And for the first time in a long time, my cup is full.